Mr Deputy President, I only intend on making some brief comments in support of the motion today because, like so many members of the public, I have been appalled by the actions of the former member for Wagga Wagga, and they must be investigated fully by the ICAC. I commend my colleague, the Honourable Daniel Mookhey, for bringing this to the attention of the House. And to be frank, Mr Deputy President, I cannot believe the protection racket that's being run by those opposite for their mate this morning. But what should we expect? After the ICAC invested systemic corruption by their party office, by 10 of their members of parliament, they then cut the funding to the independent investigator. Let's have a look at the scoreboard. We now have a total of 11 Liberal members of parliament forced to the crossbench or out of parliament, including their Premier. A full cricket team. Indeed, the failure of the current Premier, the third in just 3 years, to speedily act on this latest scandal with the former member for Wagga Wagga shows just how weak they are when it comes to excising these individuals from their party. Instead of forcing the member for Wagga Wagga to resign immediately, it was only after Labor promised to expel him from the other place, as they should have, that she turned to a previous Liberal Premier who was forced out by his admissions to ICAC to do it for her. It really does make you wonder what kind of influence he still wields within that party. It makes you wonder who really is running the place. The actions of the former member for Wagga Wagga must be investigated by the ICAC and investigated fully. Because the reported phone calls that he was making about cutting deals and acting for developers occurred in 2016, well after those previous 10 Liberals were forced out after colluding with developers. His willful disregard, in spite of the consequences even for his closest colleagues, calls his entire 20-year history in the other place into disrepute. Just what was the former member for Wagga Wagga doing intervening in council affairs over 400 kilometres outside his electorate? Now, the Leader of the Government in his contribution today has mounted the same poor line of defence that the Premier tried last week in the other place. He said that these matters are already being investigated. Well, let's have a look at the current terms of reference for the current inquiry by the ICAC. They are designed to deal specifically with characters within the Canterbury Council and their dealings, as it should, Mr Deputy President. But we must have a separate inquiry to allow the full investigation of the former member for Wagga Wagga's 20-year career.
Did you say omit or delete?
Mr Deputy President, the Honourable Trevor Khan, in his contribution, questioned the motives for this motion this morning. He spoke about the upcoming by-election in Wagga Wagga as though it was almost incidental to our discussions today. Let's be very clear. The people of Wagga Wagga are being forced to the polls in several weeks' time because of the disregard, because of the corruption that occurred by their former representative, their former long-term representative. A former representative that those opposite thought could hide from the public, cowering on the crossbenches for the next 8 months until the election, taking a taxpayer's wage until the election, hiding from the public. Now, I too commend our excellent candidate in the by-election, and the people of Wagga will have their say on the former member for Wagga Wagga's action. But the motives for this motion this morning is a full investigation. Now, the Honourable Trevor Khan in his contribution spoke about how previous investigations began with a kernel of information. Mr Deputy President, I say to you that on the public record there is more than a kernel that would inspire a future investigation. The Honourable Daniel Mookhey outlined the matters that are clearly on the public record that demand investigation by the ICAC fully and transparently. Those opposite have also said that we should write to the ICAC. Yes, we can. And the ICAC can consider it. But a motion from this place compels the ICAC to investigate. More importantly than that, Mr. Deputy President, it will not only compel them to act, it will send a strong message to the people of New South Wales what this chamber expects from its members in this place and in the other place. The attitude that we take towards our representatives. Mr. Deputy President. Mr. Deputy President, I have no doubt that almost all the members of this place and the other place come into office with the best of intentions to serve the public and to act in their interest on both sides of the chamber. And the vast majority do this during their time in this place and in the other place. But sadly, Mr. Deputy President, that is not the public perception. And that public perception is further sullied by the disgraceful actions of the former member for Wagga Wagga. If we are to improve the public's view of the very important work that we do as members of this place and reflect the immense privilege that it is to be here as a member, the ICAC must investigate the actions of the former member for Wagga Wagga, and he should suffer the consequences. I commend the motion to the House.
Mr. Deputy President.